Good morning from me in the morning Bible hour. Welcome in. It is Tuesday the 24th of May 2022. Congratulations, you have made it this far on planet Earth without dying. May you have many more days of that happening. But if you are worried about that great day where you'll be called to an account before the living God, just trust in Jesus. It starts now. Everlasting life starts now, and then just carries on beyond the river Jordan. Some people think Christianity is just a ticket to heaven, but Jesus makes the point that life starts now, because everlasting life is to know Him and His Father. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we come this morning to read the Bible, to learn more about Him and His Father and the Holy Spirit, to have our hearts strangely warmed before we go off to our various callings in life. A good question to ask when we read the Bible might be this: what do we learn about ourselves? 2 Timothy 3:16-17 says this: all scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. And it's exciting times this morning, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, because we have made it all the way to the Book of Ecclesiastes. We'll learn more about that in a few moments' time. Let's check out the live chat. Remember, if anything strikes you in any of these regions, just pop it in the chat. If you have any questions, just pop it in the chat. If you want more little Bible teaching snippets, there's a playlist on the YouTube channel called Bible Teaching Snippets. If you want more music, there's a music playlist. John T, hi Owen, I'm here. You're the man, John T. You are the man. First in. Every day almost. Ready for the Book of Ecclesiastes. Diane, good morning everyone. Good morning, Diane. What is up, Malcolm? On the bike. Good to see it. I'll be scooting to work this morning. What is up, Rachel Freeman? Rachel, I texted your minister yesterday and I said, I got a quiz. If you ever want to run a quiz night in your church, just let me know. I'll come up and run a quiz night for you. You can have some food, someone give an evangelistic talk. I'm ready to go, I said, let me know. Paula Barrett, hello. It was lovely having drinks after the service on Sunday. All right. They love the drinks. Drink and chat. Brew, morning from SW19. Hey. Wasn't that BBC program called that? Or was that SW20? Rita loved that program. When they were trying to plan for whatever it was, the Olympics, was it? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. What is up, a minister who doesn't look like a minister? Yes, that is true. Yesterday, I was not allowed in to visit one of our members in Heath Hospital who has broken his hip. The nurses did not let me in. Sometimes it goes down like that when I rock up looking like me. Wow, Owen. All right, Rachel, calm down. It's just a quiz. Here we are, the Book of Ecclesiastes. I'm going to say some words about Ecclesiastes. Maybe you've never read this book before. Well, the vanity of life is presented in the Book of Ecclesiastes. Let's get a bit technical, ladies and gentlemen. The precise meaning of the word chabel, used throughout Ecclesiastes to describe many facets of life, have been debated. And you know it's not going to help reading this translation to figure out the answer to that debate. Some translations render the word as vapor, breath, futile, meaningless, absurd, fleeting, or senseless. But the most commonly used word in English for that word chabel is vanity. When applying vanity as the predominant translation, several instances occur where the preacher of Ecclesiastes appears to present life and everything in it as vain, hopeless, without a point. We're in for an upbeat ride this morning, ladies and gentlemen. The preacher, also known as or called Koheleth, because yes, the ancient church has always had teachers, means one who addresses a church or an assembly. And he's picking up the vibes of wisdom, because wisdom is important to the ancient church, as we saw in the last book we just read, and in Job chapter 28, and Psalm 37, and Proverbs 1, and Proverbs 13, and Proverbs 8. Look out for vanity, look out for wisdom. In different places, Koheleth, the teacher, shows that enjoyment can be had when walking with God. Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going out to work today, work is from the hands of God. We're going to see that there is pleasure here, to be sure, and enjoyment of the good things in life, but it is pleasure received from God's hand and joy expressed in His presence. And that way, this preacher-teacher that we're about to be reading about provides an answer to those looking for truth. Ladies and gentlemen, God exists, and to honor Him is the path to true joy. So without further ado, we come to Ecclesiastes Chapter 1. I remember when I was young, one of my Bibles, I got a book on Ecclesiastes. It says grab a blue pen and circle Ecclesiastes 1 verse 1 to 18. Then grab a red pen and circle Ecclesiastes 1:19 to chapter 3 verse 24. And then the whole book you divide into who's saying what when. But we're not going to do that. But there's a few people. Sometimes this teacher is being like a non-Christian. Sometimes he's being a Christian, and he's showing the different perspectives that we can have in life. John D, I still remember my postcode from London days, NW3 3HX. Wow. Rachel Freeman, make sure you ask a question about Hubble Space Telescope so I can get one quick. I thought it was the Hubble Space Craft that you said. May we think and speak and feel in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Ecclesiastes 1. These are the words of the teacher, Koheleth, King David's son, who ruled in Jerusalem. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. What do people get for all their hard work under the sun? Generations come and go, but the earth never changes. The sun rises and the sun sets, then hurries around to rise again. So there's a lot of this. And then occasionally he'll show a ray of hope when he's trusting in the Lord and thinking about his job. The wind blows south and then turns north, and around it goes, blowing in circles. Rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows out again to the sea. Everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. History merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Sometimes people say, here is something new. But actually it's old. Nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past. And in future generations, no one will remember what we are doing now. I, the teacher, was king of Israel, and I lived in Jerusalem. I devoted myself to search for understanding and to explore by wisdom everything being done under heaven. I soon discover that God has dealt a tragic existence to the human race. I observed everything going on under the sun, and really, it is all meaningless, like chasing the wind. What is wrong cannot be made right. What is missing cannot be recovered. I said to myself, look, am I wiser than any of the kings who ruled in Jerusalem before me? I have greater wisdom and knowledge than any of them. So I set out to learn everything from wisdom to madness and folly. But I learned firsthand that pursuing all this is like chasing the wind. The greater my wisdom, the greater my grief. To increase knowledge only increases sorrow. I said to myself, come on, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. But I found that this too was meaningless. So I said, laughter is silly. What good does it do to seek pleasure? After much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine, and while still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. In this way, I tried to experience the only happiness most people find during their brief life in this world. This is like a blog or a series of tweets from teenagers in 2022. I also tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and planting beautiful vineyards. Okay, there are some differences. I made gardens and parks, filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect the water to irrigate many flourishing groves. I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born into my household. I also owned large herds and flocks, more than any of the kings who lived in Jerusalem before me. I collected great sums of silver and gold, the treasure of many kings and provinces. I hired wonderful singers, both men and women, and had many beautiful concubines. I had everything a man could desire. So I became greater than all who had lived in Jerusalem before me, and my wisdom never failed me. Anything I want, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all my labors. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless, like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. I don't know if that's what you're feeling this morning. I bet someone in this class feels like that this morning. Or if you're watching it back tomorrow, maybe it's you. So I decided to compare wisdom with foolishness and madness. For who can do this better than I, the king? I thought, wisdom is better than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise can see where they are going, but fools walk in the dark. Yet I saw the wise and the foolish share the same fate. I'm just going to stop there, because we need to note something. When considering wisdom, at times the preacher describes it as something positive, like in verse 14. It excels, like light excels darkness. However, he quickly annuls his appraisal of it, deeming it vanity, because whether or not a man is wise or foolish, the same events happen to everyone. See that? They share the same fate. For this preacher, as long as there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool, then even wisdom is vain. a funny chap called Tremple Longman, argues that some in the assembly would have been seeking to be wise outside of belief in God, and therefore finding it a vain endeavour because it brings no certainty of the afterlife. The preacher shows that when wisdom is pursued outside of a spiritual perspective, it contributes nothing to understanding true reality, which is in Christ. You know the people in his crowd are like, wow, yeah, I have been trying to get wise without Jesus. Both will die. So I said to myself, since I will end up in the same place as the fool, what's the value of my wisdom? This is all so meaningless. For the wise and the fool both die. The wise will not be remembered any longer than the fool. In the days to come, both will be forgiven. So there you go. Wealth, fame, fortune, it's all transitory. In the end, death brings the wise man and the fool to the same place, ladies and gentlemen. And that might be a message that you need to know as you go to work, to chase the dollar. A life devoted to the accumulation of wealth is futile. Incidentally, Diane, how did house groups go last night? Give us a nice little summary in chat. We want to know. So I came to hate life because everything done here under the sun is so troubling. Everything is meaningless, like chasing the wind. You know my man Solomon's got some Welsh in him. Probably had a Welsh wife as well. I came to hate all my hard work here on earth, for I must leave to others everything I have earned. And who can tell whether my successors will be wise or foolish? Yet they will control everything I have gained by my skill and hard work under the sun. What is up, Joan? How meaningless. So I gave up in despair, questioning the value of all my hard work in this world. Some people work wisely with knowledge and skill, then must leave the fruit of their labours to someone who hasn't worked for it. This too is meaningless, a great tragedy. So what do people get in this life for all their hard work and anxiety? Their days of labour are filled with pain and grief. Even at night their minds cannot rest. It is all meaningless. He's not holding back this morning. So I decided there's nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. Then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? Ladies and gentlemen, the food and drink you're going to drink today is from God. It's not meaningless when you remember that these things are from God and for God, just like us. God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please him. But if a sinner becomes wealthy, God takes the wealth away and gives it to those who please him. This too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Do not try to become wealthy and not godly this morning. Try to become godly and then get some money, give it to your family, give it to people in need. Get whatever you need, give it to your church, do whatever, but don't live a life accumulating wealth without God. One of the most famous chapters in the Bible, Ecclesiastes 3. Here's some interesting things about Ecclesiastes Chapter 3. Koheleth, the teacher, is more... Oh, what is up, Diane? I thought HG went well. We finished the last study in the book about doubting Thomas, and we can all relate to that one. The big T. I'll ask Rita for a full report later today, Diane. Koheleth's more positive advice by dispelling false consciousness about the world and by undermining false dreams and hopes. I think the sentence I just read aloud did not make sense. But it's also noteworthy here that the context of chabel, or vanity, defines its meaning, and so can be varied from everything is meaningless to everything is a breath. Check that out in this chapter. Therefore, though the earth is subject to vanity and is transitory, for someone who loves God, it is not meaningless. No believer's life is meaningless to God. 1 Timothy 4 verse 4. Go read it. Flick forward. It was fashioned, purchased, and loved before time began. Jeremiah 31 verse 3. Thus, there is a marked difference between the existence of a believer and a non-believer. Check that out in chapter 2:26, 3:17, 8:12-13, 9:1-2. And the life worth living is in the light of eternity. 11-15 of this chapter. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven. Diane is like teaching practice all over again, you know it. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter scones? Ladies and gentlemen, if you have got a scone for lunch today, there is a time to scatter it. But also, there's a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to turn away. A time to search and a time to quit searching. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend and a time to be quiet and a time to speak and a time to love and a time to hate and a time for war and a time for peace. And all those things Jesus did at the right time. And none of it was meaningless for him. Even before Pilate, a time to speak and a time to be silent. What do people really get for all their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all, yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I concluded there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. So there is a way to honor the times in your life in a non-futile way. And I know that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added to it or taken from it. God's purpose is that people should fear Him. What is happening now has happened before, and what will happen in the future has happened before, because God makes the same things happen over and over again. I also notice that under the sun there is evil in the courtroom, yes, even in the courts of law. Even the courts of law are corrupt. I said to myself, in due season God will judge everything, both good and bad, for all their deeds. I also thought about the human condition, how God proves to people that they are like animals. For people and animals share the same fate. Both breathe, both must die. So people have no real advantage over the animals. How meaningless! Both go to the same place. They came from dust and they return to dust. For who can prove that the human spirit goes up and the spirit of animals goes down into the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better for people than to be happy in their work. There is our lot in life, and no one can bring us back to see what happens after we die. Mayer's outside if you're looking for it. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the morning Bible hour. We're reading about the transitory vain life without God. Is that you? It can change this morning. You can eat and drink and be merry to the glory of God instead. And even work to the glory of God. Otherwise, death is the great leveler, and everything that you've earned and live for goes down the Swanee. It was all for nothing. Again, I observed all the oppression that takes place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed with no one to comfort them. The oppressors have great power and their victims are helpless. So I concluded that the dead are better off than the living. But most fortunate of all are those who are not yet born, for they have not seen all the evil that is done under the sun. Then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbours. But this too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Fools fold their idle hands, leading them to ruin, and yet better to have one handful with quietness than two handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. This is the case of a man who is all alone, without child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It is all so meaningless and depressing. Two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. But if one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, two people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? So remember, there's the church teacher there with a big assembly of church people in front of him, learning the value of church family. When we fall, we do not fall alone in church. God sets us in families. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you part of a local church family? No man is an island. God is not an island, but a loving union of three, a church. Likewise, two people lying close. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. You probably had that read in your wedding. Come on, you did, didn't you? You did. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And then the preacher went on to say how Jesus is that third person in every stable marriage. Yep, that's what he said in your wedding, didn't he? It is better to be a poor but wise youth than an old and foolish king who refuses all advice. Such a youth could rise from poverty and succeed. He might even become king, though he has been in prison. But then everyone rushes to the side of yet another youth who replaces him. Endless crowds stand around him, but then another generation grows up and rejects him too. So it is all meaningless, like chasing the wind. I tell you something. Let me put the big screen on for this point. I was asking the teenagers last Tuesday in club, have you heard of ... And I would ask them all the famous people that thousands of people gathered around in my day and tried to be like and sound like and look like and follow. They didn't hear of any of them. Another generation has grown up and now rejects them and goes, who? Or what was rubbish compared to what I listened to? They hadn't heard of the Stereophonics. They hadn't heard of the Manic Street Preachers. They hadn't heard of the Kings of Leon. They hadn't heard of the Rolling Stones, although one in the group had. They hadn't heard of The Who, The Clash. They hadn't heard of And the list went on and on and on and on. They had heard of Michael Jackson. Everybody has always heard of Michael Jackson. He sort of rides the generations. Him, the Beatles, and Frank Sinatra and Elvis. But everybody else, Solomon's words are true. So point being there, even living for, say, Harry Styles and trying to be like him and live for his attention instead of Jesus is ultimately futile. I guess every generation feels this, but there is a distinct lack of decent music at the moment that these people are listening to. Man, it was just better. Used to be a lot better. But that's what my gramps used to say to me. As you enter the house of God, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. It is evil to make mindless offerings to God. Don't make rash promises and don't be hasty in bringing matters before God. After all, God is in heaven and you are here on earth. So let your words be few. Why do you go to church? Do you go with a clipboard to grade the music and the prayers and the teaching and what people are like? Why do you go to church? Is it to meet the living God and be changed? Too much activity gives you restless dreams. Too many words make you a fool. When you make a promise to God, don't delay in following through, for God takes no pleasure in fools. Keep all the promises you make to him. It is better to say nothing than to make a promise and not keep it. Don't let your mouth make you sin. And don't defend yourself by telling the temple messenger that the promise you made was a mistake. That would make God angry and he might wipe out everything that you have achieved. Talk is cheap, like daydreams and other useless activities. Fear God instead. Empty words everywhere. Don't be surprised if you see a poor person being oppressed by the powerful and if justice is being miscarried throughout the land. For everything official is under orders from higher up, and matters of justice get lost in red tape and bureaucracy. Even the king milks the land for his own profit. Those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. The more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. So what good is wealth, except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers? People who work hard sleep well, whether they eat little or much. But the rich seldom get a good night's sleep. There is another serious problem I have seen under the sun. Hoarding riches harms the saver. Money is put into risky investments that turn sour and everything is lost. In the end, there is nothing left to pass on to one's children. We all come to the end of our lives as naked and as empty-handed as on the day we were born. We can't take our riches with us. And this too is a very serious problem. People leave this world no better off than when they came. All their hard work is for nothing, like working for the wind. Throughout their lives, they live under a cloud, frustrated, discouraged, and angry. Even so, I have noticed one thing at least that is good. It is good for people to eat, drink, and enjoy their work under the sun during the short life God has given them, and to accept their lot in life. I'm talking to my dad. He's noticing that people his age are dying, and he now buys a newspaper to see who he knows that have died. That period of life is good for people to eat and enjoy their work during the short life God has given them, and to accept their lot in life. Thing is, it's like the body's getting old, but you're as young as you were when you were young inside. So it's like a constant clash. Growing old. A time for anxiety for many. I think my dad's got a book called Growing Old Gracefully, and it's about how to trust in Christ more than ever in your last years. Although maybe he's not in his last years because he's only 78. Could have another 25 years. But any of us could be called home today. Life is short, that's the point. And it is a good thing to receive wealth from God and the good health to enjoy it, to enjoy your work and accept your lot in life. This indeed is a gift from God. God keeps such people so busy enjoying life that they take no time to brood over the past. I think if these readings do anything today, it should save us from expelling needless energy on needless things, because our life is quickly over. What are we going to do with our limited time today? I'm going to sit in a foyer and listen to people talk. And I don't think that's a waste of time. Ecclesiastes Chapter 6. Welcome in, everybody. There is another serious tragedy that I have seen under the sun, and it weighs heavily on humanity. God gives some people great wealth and honor and everything they could ever want, but then he doesn't give them the chance to enjoy these things. They die, and someone else, even a stranger, ends up enjoying their wealth. This is meaningless, a sickening tragedy. A man might have 100 children and live to be very old, but if he finds no satisfaction in life and doesn't even get a decent burial, it would have been better for him to be born dead. His birth would have been meaningless, and he would have ended in darkness. He wouldn't even have had a name. He would have never have seen the sun or known of its existence. Yet he would have had more peace than in growing up to be an unhappy man. He might live 1,000 years twice over, but still not find contentment. And since he must die like everyone else, well, what's the use? All people spend their lives scratching for food, but they never seem to have enough. So are wise people really better off than fools? Do poor people gain anything by being wise and knowing how to act in front of others? Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Just dreaming about nice things is meaningless, like chasing the wind. There you go. Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Copy, paste, Ecclesiastes 6 into my notes. Everything has already been decided. It was known long ago what each person would be, so there's no use arguing with God about your destiny. The more words you speak, the less they mean, so what good are they? In the few days of our meaningless lives, who knows how our days can be best spent? Our lives are like a shadow. Who can tell what will happen on this earth after we are gone? I do think the life of Jesus really obliterates a lot of the aspirations we sell today as the true life. Because Jesus didn't really have a home, didn't have much money, died young, single, celibate. Yet he was the man full of life. A good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume, and the day you die is better than the day you were born. Better to spend your time at funerals than at parties. After all, everyone dies, so the living should take this to heart. I've been wondering, should we take a church trip with the young people just to walk around Catay's cemetery? Now, no, hear me out. Just get them to look at the dates. Surely there would be some good in that. People would be like, that's morbid, Owen, that's weird. But is it? Is it to remind our children not to live for transitory things? Because their times too will come. Sunday school trip. Church family outing to Catay's cemetery. What do you think? Sorrow is better than laughter, for sadness has a refining influence on us. What is up, Peaches a cat? A wise person thinks a lot about death, while a fool thinks only about having a good time. Better to be criticized. Oh, and we have put death away. We've hidden it away so people don't think about it anymore. We've hidden death away so that people don't think about it anymore. I got a book over there. It's called On Death. And it's saying the high percentage of children that would die in the houses of parents until this modern generation where hospitals have excelled and medical science has come along so much. But death used to be a massive part of your day-to-day wanderings around. And people would usually die in your houses, and you'd have to deal with that and grieve. But now we put it away. We put it in hospitals. We sanitize death. We dress it up. We put people in homes far away, and we just expel it. It's no longer right there in our living rooms. And do you also notice now that, and I'm grateful that medical science has come along and that there are hospitals, and that's not the point I'm making. I'm making the point. Have you also realized that now we live like there's not a world to come? A wise person thinks a lot about death, but a fool thinks only about having a good time. It is appointed for man once to die, and after that, the judgment. Better to be criticized by a wise person than to be praised by a fool. In fact, stay there. Let me labour this point and read a chunk from this book. Wait. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. What is up, y'all? It's your boy. Just staying on this point. A wise person thinks about death. Obviously, you can overdo that and make an idol of thinking about death, instead of thinking about Jesus. But listen to this. Here is a book called On Death. This chapter is called The Blessing of Modern Medicine. Death was something that people used to see up close. To take just one example, the prominent British minister and theologian John Owen, 1616 to 1683, outlived every one of his 11 children, as well as his first wife. Since people died where they lived at home, Owen literally saw nearly every person he loved die before his own eyes. The average family in the United States in colonial times lost 1 out of every 3 children before adulthood. And since the life expectancy of all people at that time was about 40 years, great numbers lost their parents when they were still children. Nearly everyone grew up seeing corpses and watching relatives die, young and old. Medicine and science have relieved us of many causes of early death. And today the vast majority of people decline and die in hospitals and hospices away from the eyes of others. It is normal now to live to adulthood and not watch anyone die, or even see a corpse, except in the brief glance of an open coffin at a funeral. Atul Gawande and others have pointed out that this hiddenness of dying in modern society means that we of all cultures live in denial of the inexorability of our impending death. Psalm 90 verse 12 calls readers to number our days, that we may gain a heart for wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen listening, do not deny the reality of your coming death. Don't repress it. Don't live today like you're going to live forever. According to the psalmist and this verse here, that is not wise. Bring it to Jesus, the death defeater. So on that day, you will be found ready for that great enemy, death. Here endeth the lesson. Except we got 15 minutes more. Welcome back, everybody, to the Morning Bible Hour. We're learning how to be wise with death. Uh-oh, switch my sewing. Click off that. I'm stuck. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh. Huh? Oh. Okay, I'm back. My mouse works. I turned the mouse off instead of on. Better to be criticized by a wise person than to be praised by a fool. A fool's laughter is quickly gone, like thorns crackling in a fire. This is also meaningless. Extortion turns wise people into fools, and bribes corrupt the heart. Finishing is better than starting. Patience is better than pride. Control your temper, for anger labels you a fool. What is, in a tighter version, finishing is better than starting? Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. What is this? Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and patient in spirit is better than proud in spirit. Control your temper, for anger labels you a fool. Don't long for the good old days. That's not wise. And you were miserable back then as well. I added that bit from experience. Wisdom is even better than when you have the money. Both are a benefit as you go through life. Wisdom and money can get you almost anything. But only wisdom can save your life. Accept the way God does things. For who can straighten what he has made crooked? Enjoy prosperity while you can, but when hard times strike, realize that both come from God. Remember that nothing is certain in this life. I have seen everything in this meaningless life, including the death of good young people and the long life of wicked people. So don't be too good or too wise. Why destroy yourself? On the one hand, don't be too wicked either. Don't be a fool. Why die before your time? Pay attention to these instructions, for anyone who fears God will avoid both extremes. One wise person is stronger than 10 leading citizens of a town. Not a single person on earth is always good and never sins. Don't eavesdrop on others. You may hear your servant curse you, for you know how often you yourself has cursed others. True that. True. What is that in a tighter version? That's quite pertinent, isn't it? Do not take to heart all the things that people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you. Your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others. Belter. Well done, Solomon. Even though you ended up a complete train wreck, you had real moments of pertinent things along the way. Where is that? Boom. In the notes, I have always tried my best to let wisdom guide my thoughts and actions, and said to myself, I am determined to be wise. But it didn't work. Wisdom is always distant and difficult to find. I searched everywhere, determining to find wisdom and to understand the reason for things. I was determined to prove to myself that wickedness is stupid and that foolishness is madness. Wait. Yeah, wickedness is stupid. Did I say wisdom? I meant wickedness. I discovered that a seductive woman is a trap more bitter than death. Her passion is a snare and her soft hands are chains. Those who are pleasing to God will escape her, but sinners will be caught in her snare. This is my conclusion, says the teacher. I discovered this after looking at the matter from every possible angle. Though I have searched repeatedly, I have not found what I'm looking for. The teenagers also hadn't heard of U2. Only 1 out of 1,000 men is virtuous, but not one woman. He's a funny one because he's just written about the virtuous wife. But I did find this. God created people to be virtuous, but they have each turned to follow their own downward path. Ecclesiastes 8. Ladies and gentlemen, everything runs its course, so in one sense ought to be enjoyed. It has been said that all sorts of people would prefer, for their own personal and cultural purposes, that God and creation should not be closely identified as they are in the Bible. Koheleth, the teacher, however, understands what the confession that God created the whole world and made it good truly means. We cannot have God without embracing his world. And we cannot, in the end, have a world without embracing God. How wonderful to be wise and to analyze and interpret things. Wisdom lights up a person's face, softening its harshness. Obey the king, since you vowed to God that you would. Don't try to avoid doing your duty, and don't stand with those who plot evil, for the king can do whatever he wants. His command is backed by great power. No one can resist or question it. Those who obey him will not be punished. Those who are wise will find a time and a way to do what is right. For there is a time and a way for everything, even when a person is in trouble. Indeed, how can people avoid what they don't know is going to happen? None of us can hold back our spirit from departing. None of us has the power to prevent the day of our death. There is no escaping that obligation, that dark battle. And in the face of death, wickedness will certainly not rescue the wicked. I have thought deeply about all that goes on here under the sun, where people have the power to hurt each other. I have seen wicked people buried with honor, yet they were the very ones who frequented the temple and are now praised in the same city where they committed their crimes. This too is meaningless. When a crime is not punished quickly, people feel it is safe to do wrong. But even though a person sins 100 times and still lives a long time, I know that those who fear God will be better off. The wicked will not prosper, for they do not fear God. Their days will never grow long like the evening shadows. And this is not all that is meaningless in our world. In this life, good people are often treated as though they were wicked, and wicked people are often treated as though they were good. This is so meaningless. So I recommend having fun, because there is nothing better for people in this world than to eat, drink, and enjoy life. That way, they will experience some happiness along the way with all the hard work God gives them under the sun. In my search for wisdom, and in my observation of people's burdens here on earth, I discovered that there is ceaseless activity day and night. I realize that no one can discover everything God is doing under the sun. Not even the wisest people discover everything, no matter what they claim. There's a group of Christians, and they think like anything physical must be avoided because we must be truly spiritual. And, there is teaching in the Bible that to eat, drink, and be merry can be a terrible tragedy if that's all that you're living for. But here, in Ecclesiastes, that phrase, eat, drink, and be merry, is usually in a positive way. As in, these things are passing gifts from God, so enjoy them. The vanity comes when we don't include God in them, and they become the object of worship. In my search for wisdom, people's burdens here after the cease of not even the wise people. Ecclesiastes Chapter 9. I think we'll stop there because it's nearly 7:56, and to start Ecclesiastes Chapter 9 would be futile and meaningless. I really enjoyed reading Ecclesiastes this morning. They're reminders of death, and they're reminders to enjoy things that God has given us. So if no one else enjoyed it, well, I did. And to some degree, that's what matters. Ladies and gentlemen, God willing, I'll be back here tomorrow. Hopefully you will be too. Have a ecclesiastical day. Ciao for now.